Hi, my name's Ed Van Buskirk, and I'm the founder of If You Love Me. And I have a question for you today. That question is, what do air pollution, mass killings, and the Ten Commandments have in common? Let's start with air pollution. Now, we all know that air pollution leads to disease, and that leads to death. And it wasn't that many years ago that it was pretty common practice for people to smoke in restaurants and on airplanes. And people started seeing the connection between that smoke, the secondhand smoke that it caused, the disease and the death that it led to. And they took corrective action to make it so that we don't have smoke in the restaurants and airplanes anymore. We can enjoy a nice meal without choking, and we can have a flight across the country and not smell like an ashtray when we arrive. Now I propose to you that we have another type of air pollution that's causing massive disease and massive death in our world today. It's not air pollution, it's spiritual pollution. And that spiritual pollution, we can see the evidence of it by it becoming common practice for lying and adultery and stealing and coveting. And these things accumulate just like secondhand smoke accumulates, and it leads to people's dying, people being killed in these mass murders. If we look at the statistics, we see that over the last 20 years, in the chart here, how it's increased dramatically at an alarming rate. How long are we going to let this go before we start seeing the connection between the lack of love in our world and these mass killings? We need to take corrective action. We need to begin by looking at the root of the problem, and it's not the weapons that are causing people to take action and do these destructive mass murders. We need to restore the love of God. We need to restore Him in our lives, and we need to restore His commandments. We need to roll back this spiritual pollution by looking at the first three commandments, remembering that God is the one true God, and we should not have any other strange gods before Him. We need to replace those strange gods in our lives personally and in society so that we can put God and His love back in the proper place. We need to restore God's name, and His name is so precious and holy. We need to make sure that using God's name is not something we just take as commonly accepted anymore. We need to push back on ourselves if we find ourselves doing that, and we need to remind others of the holiness of God's name. And we need to make sure that on the Lord's Day that we put God front and center. We make sure that the rest of our day is planned in relationship to the day that God's given to us, putting God first and worshiping God at church, resting in God, and building relationships and enjoying relationships with one another, truly living the divine day of vacation as God intended it. We need to restore these things so that we can cause the spiritual pollution to dissipate. Now, you may be asking yourself, how can I make any impact on this? How can I change how the world is behaving? Individually, we can't, but collectively, we certainly can. And I propose three things for you to do. And collectively, if we do this, we can truly make a big impact. And the first is, if you don't have an image of the Ten Commandments displayed somewhere in your home, to get one and put it in a prominent place. We have on our website several different styles of commandments that you can print off and find it and frame. Everybody's got several frames in the back of a closet somewhere. Put it into a frame, and put it into a prominent place for you to see and for others to be reminded of the commandments. And then focus on the first three commandments. This is where the root cause of the problem is. By having strange gods, we need to put the one true God first and foremost. By using God's name not in a degrading way, but in an honoring way, a way that lifts up God's image and our love for Him and others' love for Him. And then third, to remember to keep holy the Lord's Day. Put God front and center in the Lord's Day in your life, and everything else in relationship to how it honors God in that day, that divine day of vacation that He gave us to truly relax and enjoy and rest in Him. And then lastly, I encourage you to invite others to do the same. Spread the word on this so we can have a big impact and roll back the effect of the spiritual pollution. and restore harmony and peace. Thank you so much, and make it a joy-filled day.